Good evening and welcome to the City of Woodstock's public planning meeting. Tonight's meeting is an open public meeting as required by the Planning Act. This meeting will be live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording of the meeting will also be posted on the city's website following the meeting. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the Agendas, Meetings, and Minutes page of the city's website. This meeting is for information and discussion purposes only, and no decisions will be made this evening. Council will make a decision on these matters at the regular council meeting to be held this Thursday. If you wish to address council at that meeting, you must submit a delegation form to the city clerk no later than 2 p.m. on Tuesday. A delegation form is available on the city website. If an application is denied, only the applicant or the minister may file an appeal with the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of issuance of the notice of council's decision. Only specified persons, public bodies, registered owners of land to which the plan may apply, the requester to amend the plan, and the minister may appeal the decision of the City of Woodstock to the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of issuance of the notice of council's decision. Excluding the minister, any party wishing to make an appeal must make written or oral submissions to council at a public meeting. Please note that third parties, anyone who is not a specified person or public body, do not have the right to appeal a decision for an official plan amendment to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Please keep your comments to planning matters only and avoid repeating comments that have already been expressed. If you have not provided oral or written comments but wish to receive formal notice of council's decision on the matter, please contact the clerk's department. The notice will provide further information on appealing the decision. The planner will be asked to present the planning report for each application. The applicant will then be provided an opportunity to make comments, followed by those wishing to speak in favor of the application, and then followed by those wishing to speak in opposition to the application. Prior to proceeding with the first application, does anyone wish to declare a pecuniary interest on any items that are on tonight's agenda? And I'm seeing none, so we will begin. We'll start with B 24-42-8, application for consent, Sukhjit Chatha and Alijit Goria, City of Woodstock. And Mr. Gilbert, the planning department will go ahead.
Thank you. This is a severance application to sever an industrial lot in the central area of the city. The lands are designated traditional industrial and they're zoned M4, which allows for a range of light industrial and service commercial uses. The proposal seeks to divide the property, create a new industrial parcel, and retaining industrial parcel for future industrial development, which would be subject to site plan approval. The lots themselves comply with the M4 zoning provisions. No relief is required. And agency comments have been identified in the report and incorporated as proposed conditions of approval. Staff recommends support of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Are there any questions on this planning application from members of council? Councillor Lauder, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Gilbert. This question came from Councillor Schadenberg, who was unable to attend tonight. And he is asking if there was any soil testing done, because he thinks that there's a lot of oily railway ties buried there.
So through the chair to the question, there'd be no automatic trigger for a record of site condition in this case, because it's zoned industrial, and as long as the proposed use remained industrial and wasn't a more sensitive land use, there'd be no condition for a record of site condition from the city. Any financial lender may require that as part of their due diligence, but it wouldn't be required by the city.
One more question. Since this is going to be industrial and manufacturing, is there anything, barriers or anything for noise that might occur from that business that would interfere with the apartment buildings on Birch Street?
Through the chair to the question, So if the applicant was proposing a sensitive or a noise generating land use that required any ECAs from the ministry for noise, odor, or vibration, they'd have to do studies that would demonstrate compatibility with the surrounding residential uses. Given their location and very close by, it's likely that the only feasible and industrial uses will be like an industrial mall or a small contractor's yard. You're not likely to see any um, stamping plants or up heavy industrial uses on the site.
Counselor Martin?
Thank you, through the chair. There is an above-ground hydro cut through this property. This severance doesn't follow along that line, does it? Like from the aerial, it looks like it's over west just a little bit?
That's correct. So that will be I think it already is within an easement, but have to be respected. The easement will be carried forward through the severance process. So it'll all be located on one property, but you won't be able to build on it unless they relocate the hydro line or bury it or do something else.
Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair to Mr. Gilbert. And this may be able to be answered by the developers, but on the back end of the property, there's kind of a jaunt. There's like a triangle piece that's not really squared off. And I'm just curious if you know exactly why that is. Yeah, you can see that.
I think that's the extent of the existing easement. So they wanted to make sure that all the easements were on the westerly
On the
property.
one side.
Yeah, so that the easterly property wouldn't have to deal with the
So that's where
easements.
the sewer, or there was a
I think
stormwater.
there's a hydro easement and there's also a sewer easement as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Gilbert. So I'll now call on the applicant or the person on behalf of the applicant to step forward. And if you can just state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Ali Zulfikar. My address is 545897 Petulo Avenue, Woodstock.
Did you want to give a brief description
Sure.
of this? Yeah.
So this property was purchased by my clients, colleagues, a few years ago. No due diligence at the time had been done. So they purchased it and started doing due diligence. Understanding there's two issues with the land itself. One, as Councilor Lauder pointed out, the environmental issue. And the second one's also the bearing capacity of the land itself when you build something on this. Now, from previous owners, I called and talked to, I was guided that there's probably 1 to 3 meters of contamination in the land. So the idea now, we will at least, as we've been talking to the city, it doesn't require the whole site to be cleaned, but we're going to intend to clean the site of the building itself, where the footings are going to go, because we would need some sort of stable ground to build the building on, right? And at the time, we'll have to relocate that soil to a designated site, and then do construction as per. The idea is to have maybe 2 or 3 units in one bigger building, which will have storefronts facing Main Street and drive-in doors facing the railway tracks. So that would be behind. I have been doing some research on sound, and that was a very good question. We can use, like, say, a precast front or precast exterior walls to kind of achieve that, in compared to maybe just like a regular steel building, which won't hold sound as better, right? So that's also an option. to do, right? The uses would be something like a contractor's yard, or could be, yes, light general industrial uses. There's not many 2,500, 3,000 square feet available for people that I work with, electricians, HVAC contractors, et cetera, et cetera. So I think if that would give those guys a chance to have their own shops in town, and they can, they don't have to go in a 15,000 square feet facility, So the idea is to have smaller industrial units. The hydro line in the middle with the sewer line, it doesn't make sense financially to build unless you're separating the two lots and then treating them individually in their own, So the idea would be to develop this lot and the other lot, maybe 5 or 10,000 square feet buildings, something like that. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer that.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of council? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair, to Ali. Thanks for being here tonight. This is a property I think is really excited to see developed. It's been sitting vacant for a very long time. You've kind of answered it with the idea of the usage. So do you have clients, like, is this something, and you don't have to answer this by any means, there's no commitment, I'm just curious. Is this going to be built quickly? Is this the idea? You have tenants now, or?
So we did a concept plan, and I had a meeting with Craig as well. Great help from Craig and his team on this project. It was about 10,000 square feet, and we could probably get 2,500 square feet, 4 units. And the idea was to build it and lease it in terms of selling it, because properties like this cannot be financed, even if you develop the building itself, because it won't have a clear record of site condition, it won't be able to finance. So the investor would then rent them out or for long-term period and just look at it as a more of a cash flow type of investment. So the idea is to develop it hopefully next year, but I don't want to, yeah, yeah, yeah. At least one of the parcels, at least, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
So I will now call on anyone that would like to speak in favor of this application to step forward. Seeing none, and I'll now call on anyone that would be against or opposing this application to step forward. Also seeing none. So we're going to move on to the next planning application. So that would be B24-38-8 and A24-12-8. Application for consent and minor variance, Jocelyn Roger Lapine and J.R. Lapine Inc., 566 Henry Street. Go ahead, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you. This is a severance application to create an infill lot for a new proposed duplex. The property is at the southeast corner of Victoria Street South and Henry Street, and the property is zoned R2. The applicant's proposing to get relief of a number of variances, including a variance to the R2 rear yard depth to reduce it from 7.5 to 7 meters, for the minimum lot frontage for a duplex from 18 meters to 13.7 meters. The lot area from 540 square meters to 340 square meters, as well the setbacks of a parking area from a street line to reduce the minimum setback of a driveway from a street line from 1 meter to nil, to facilitate, again, the development of a duplex on the lands to be severed. Surrounding land uses are a mix of commercial and residential, with a wide variety of dwelling types and densities. Staff have reviewed the application and are generally supportive of the application. It will facilitate a residential infill development. As well, with respect to the number of variances requested, staff note that if this was, instead of a duplex, if it was a single attached dwelling with an ARU, then it would meet all the R2 zone provisions. But in this case, because it's a duplex, it doesn't meet those provisions. But in the end, the number of units proposed are the same. Staff are also satisfied that the parking is appropriate. It does provide the 4 required parking spaces. Although the 2 parking spaces are closer to the street than what normally would be permitted, it's not atypical for parking elsewhere in the city on private driveways. And the proposed lot fabric will fit in with the existing streetscape of the area, which again, it's a wide variety of housing types and densities, as well as there's a mixed-use development approved on the north side of Henry Street on the opposite side of the road. And the front yard depth in this case of 3 meters, it's appropriate. That's the established building line of the existing development to the east along Henry Street. For these reasons, planning staff recommends support of the application as it will be proceeding to Land Division Committee at the October meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Are there any questions on this application? Seeing none, thank you very much. And I will now call on the applicant or the representative to step forward. And if you could state your name and address, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Burke, 28 Wellington Street North in Woodstock. And I'm just here mostly to answer any questions, but I wanted to, sometimes when we don't have elevations or photos to share, I just wanted to paint maybe a little bit of a picture. If you look on the northwest corner, I don't think it's shown in this aerial, but you've probably driven over that bridge like myself a million times. And there's a very similar unit on the northwest corner. And and that's really the objective here. The one thing that we've kind of incorporated into the plan is having a garage as well as the parking spaces. So just a way to increase parking. That would give 2 spots for each unit. And then maybe one other comment, and this is just not necessarily with respect to this unit, but just in general as it relates to why we would go to want to have a true duplex versus an ARU. And essentially it comes down to banking. So let's say you had a family that wanted to build this or purchase this with an ARU. The bank would not consider the income from the ARU in their financial layout for the approval. So they would look at the space and say, oh, it's finished space, so that's lovely. But they wouldn't get accounted for any of the income. So it doesn't really kind of move the needle on affordability, because a small duplex is a great way for people to get into the market, right? You're giving up that you don't get the whole space, and you're giving up that you have to have a neighbor sense in the home that you're sharing it as a duplex. But it is a great way for first-time home buyers to purchase. And all of the normal banking rules for first-time buyers apply for a duplex that's an owner-occupied duplex. So this is a great opportunity to, I mean, of course, it could be an investor, but it's a great opportunity for a first-time home buyer to be able to get into a modest home, because essentially these would be kind of a small 2-bedroom bungalow up and a small 2-bedroom bungalow down, and just get their foot in the market. And then down the road, of course, somebody else could buy that off them and they could move on. So I just want to share with that, because it's kind of an interesting, the banks have not really given us a lot of latitude with ARUs to consider the income. They may in the future, but as of right now, it doesn't really help move the needle on the affordability, from an affordability perspective on the banking side. Okay, and then just open for any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Burke? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Okay, great, thank you.
I will now call on anyone that would wish to come forward that would be in favor of this application. Seeing none, and I will now call on anyone that would be against opposition of this application to step forward. Also seeing none, so we'll move on to the last application for tonight. ZN 8-24-11, application for zone change, Sapson Holdings Woodstock, Inc., 1510 Dundas Street. Go ahead, Mr. Gilbert.
Okay, this is a zone change application affecting a site, south side of Dundas, close to Oxford Road 4. The property currently has an approved site plan for a hotel with a eating establishment associated with Tim Hortons and a gas bar and a car wash. The applicant's proposing to add an additional restaurant on the western portion of the site. As part of that, they need relief of the required parking to reduce the parking for the hotel from 1.2 spaces per room to 1 space per room, as well as reducing the parking requirements for the eating establishment from 1 space per 10 square meters to 1 space per 10.7 square meters. The applicant has provided a parking study that was included in the agenda that analyzed similar hotel sites around Southern Ontario that are not close to high order transit and indicated that they have similar parking demand than what is provided. In this instance, staff are supportive of the reduced parking. We note that really there'll be no external impacts to the site as there's no parking permitted on Dundas, there's no parking on Oxford Road 4. So if there is a parking issue, it'll be contained to the site and it'll impact only their property. Given this, staff are supportive of the application and recommend that it be approved.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Gilbert? Counselor Lauder?
Thank you, through the chair to Mr. Gilbert. One question that I have here. When you leave the hotel plaza, you can not turn left or westbound on Dundas with the concrete median there. Are they going to ask for access for this at a later date?
Through Madam Chair, they submitted a TIS. I don't believe that asked for any relief of the concrete median, so no, it would stay as is. You'd have to exit through the adjacent site down to Oxford Road 4 and then make a left-hand turn, go up to the stoplights at Oxford Road 4.
Counselor Martin? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Through the chair, Derek. I was asked today, and I promised I would ask if I didn't find out, is there a Taco Bell going in there?
No, not a Taco Bell.
Thank you. I've asked.
Counselor Martin?
Thank you, through the chair. The original application, the C435, what was the parking, was it 1.2?
Yes, it was 1.2 for the hotel.
Yeah.
And then it had special provisions for interior side yard setbacks between the two sites.
So what has changed between that approval and now? Is it the addition of a second restaurant
Yeah.
that's changing
The second restaurant, so there was parking spaces all here, so those are
Okay.
all gone now. And then you also have the required drive-through parking. You need, I think, 11 spaces before the window and 2 spaces after the window. So that was in this area, which also eliminated additional parking. So that there's less parking available on site.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. I'll now ask for the applicant or the representative to step forward. And again, if you can just state your name and address, please.
Good evening, Francesco Fiorani from Brew Consulting here on behalf of the owner of the subject property. Address 113 Miranda Avenue, Toronto, Ontario.
And if you wanted to just give a brief overview about the application, you're more than welcome to, or we can just volley questions at you should we have them.
Yeah, but no, I just wanted to state that I've read the staff report that we worked quite thoroughly with staff back and forth, and I'm glad that we came to this resolution. We have a positive staff report, and I agree with the conclusions and the recommendations of the report. And if you have any further questions or want any more detailed information about the proposal, I have given staff a copy of our brief presentation. Okay, so here's a presentation for 1510 Dundas Street. So here's an aerial view of the subject property. As you can see, it's near the southwest corner of Dundas Street and Oxford Road 4. It is it's on the outskirts of the city of Woodstock, primarily in a developing industrial commercial area. There's no residential uses nearby. As for the details of the proposed development, we are doing it on a subject site that consists of a lot area of about 10,000 square meters or 1 hectare. The property has a lot frontage of 127 meters, 417 feet, and a lot depth of 80 meters or 263 feet. The development proposal seeks to build the following buildings and facilities. The primary one previously approved is 1 5-story hotel with a total of 90 rooms. 1 dine-in restaurant, which I believe would be a Denny's, and then 1 drive-through restaurant with about 11 stacking spaces, whereas 13 are required, as staff said. And then the total parking supply would be 151 spaces, and this wouldn't be including the shared spaces with the adjacent gas station site in Tim Hortons, where we can borrow 3 spaces, but staff in the report suggested that it's not necessary. Nonetheless, we can offer it. Here's a visual of the site plan. Today we are dealing with the portion of the lands on the left-hand side. You can see the hotel and the 2 proposed restaurants and the surrounding parking supply. In terms of land use, the subject property is situated within the service commercial designation under Schedule W1 of the City of Woodstock Land Use Plan of the County Official Plan. This designation permits all of the proposed uses, including the hotel, the restaurant, and the drive-through facility. As such, the development meets the general intent of the County Official Plan, and an amendment to the official plan is not required. As for the zoning bylaw, the subject property is regulated by the provisions of the city's bylaw 8626-10. The subject lands are currently zoned special highway commercial zones C4-35, which permits a wide range of commercial uses, including the proposed hotel, the restaurant, and the drive-through facility. An amendment to the zoning bylaw, as staff said, is required to introduce 2 site-specific provisions. The first one to reduce the number of parking spaces for the hotel from an equivalent 1.2 spaces per guest room to 1 space per guest room, and 1 space per 10 square meters to 1 space per 10.7 square meters for a restaurant. Initially in the beginning, it was less. It was about 0.8 spaces. However, as per staff recommendation and as a result of additional studies from proxy sites in Southern Ontario, we decided to bump it up as recommended by traffic staff to 1 space per guest room. It's for the hotel. And then the second site-specific exception is to reduce the number of parking spaces after a pickup window for a restaurant from 2 to 0. And we were able to manage this. Initially, this was an issue because the drive-through was on the north side of the property near Dundas Street. And we chose, after discussing it with staff thoroughly, we chose to shift the drive-through to the south of the site to keep the traffic fully internal to the site. And staff thought that was the better solution, so we proceeded with that. With that, we prepared a parking justification study, which again included these proxy sites in Southern Ontario. It was initially in the GTA, but then we proceeded to include sites near the city of Woodstock. And that led to the conclusion that a parking supply of 151 spaces would be adequate to accommodate the expected parking demand, with, again, no impact on Dundas Street and Oxford Road 4. The study also found that the proposed space reduction for the drive-through facility would be adequate, given the location being internal to the site, as I said before, which would allow for better on-site, more efficient on-site circulation. Overall, we believe the zoning changes being requested are minor in nature and would permit for a highly functional development that will service the area well and also create much needed jobs for the city of Woodstock. Overall, the requested exceptions, in our opinion, meet the general intent of the county official plan as they facilitate a use that contributes to the economic development of the city of Woodstock while respecting the principles of good land use planning. The exceptions meet the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as a slightly reduced parking supply and drive-through stacking spaces will not compromise the surrounding context and will serve the operation and functionality of the proposed development without negative impacts. The proposed zoning changes are desirable for the appropriate use of the subject property, and they will assist to maximize and efficiently use the lands to facilitate a compatible build form with the service commercial area, this part of the city of Woodstock. Overall, in our professional opinion, this represents good land use planning, and we believe it should be supported by the city of Woodstock. That's my presentation. Thank you very much. Look forward to any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? It's a tiebreaker. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm looking at plate 3 here, and this is a really busy site plan. There is a lot packed into this site. I'm curious, where do you anticipate service vehicles and delivery vehicles coming in and unloading supplies for these businesses? So I'm not seeing a back door or a mechanism for back door entrance. Is this going to be front door unloading of materials and supplies?
There is a loading space proposed. It's between I could pull up the visual screen. There is a loading space in between the dine-in restaurant and the hotel right over here. It's strategically located with a wide sidewalk to allow for the efficient unloading of materials. And generally, this would happen at night when these users are not operating.
So for building, if I may continue through the chair, building 500, I don't see any way from the front, the side, or the back that supplies would be able to go in and out of there. I'm thinking waste management. I'm thinking raw materials coming in. If you have 11 cars going through that drive-through in and out and then back out onto Dundas Street, there's no way a truck is going to be able to unload, offload without causing some traffic impacts. I mean, waste management doesn't come at 2 o'clock in the morning. They're often middle of the day. So I'm just curious how that flow might work.
It is my understanding that waste pickup would be private on this property, and it wouldn't occur during the busy hours of the drive-through.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Francesco. Was that right? Yes, sorry. I have similar concerns, the unloading, loading, I think I can picture during the night, I suppose. But what about staff? I got to think, we're talking hotel, 1 car per room. If you've got a full night, where would staff park then? If you only got 90 parking spots then assigned to like the hotel, is there concern, let alone the staff at the different restaurants, the 2 restaurants? Like, I'm just a little hesitant still on the parking.
Through you, Mr. Chair, our parking study has considered staff parking and found the supply to be acceptable overall.
Okay. May I continue? Sorry, just along that same lines then. May I assume that the same owner is gonna have the entire block, including the gas station and Tim Hortons? So overflow parking can easily go onto that property if so?
That is correct. As part of our study, the traffic study, we did say that 3 parking spots from the adjacent site can be accommodated. Additional ones can easily be accommodated as well. However, city traffic staff suggested that it wasn't necessary. Nonetheless, it will be there. The owner owns both properties, so the parking supply can easily shift in practice.
Okay, well, it certainly makes it better. Okay, thank you.
Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
Through you, Chair, to Mr. Francesco, or not Mr. Francesco, sorry. On slide, I think it's your second slide, you can see like the aerial view of the 2 buildings. Behind like the Tim Hortons and the gas bar, there's kind of like a road that goes across to kind of in behind, and that's behind even the drive-through. Is that going to be adjoined to the next, right into this new development so that folks could technically drive behind these establishments to go onto Oxford Road 4?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. That is the driveway at the very
Yeah.
south is intended to connect both sides and to allow traffic to go into Oxford Road 4, which would answer councillor questions here that we wouldn't be going onto Dundas Street and
Mhm.
turning left. The median has to stay there. As such, that drive-through at the very south is specifically intended to accommodate traffic to go into Oxford Road 4.
So that would also address like the concerns of trucks and such. They're not going to be having to necessarily utilize the Dundas access. They're going to be able to utilize these other access points as well, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Any further questions? I just had one, and perhaps I missed it, but was there any consideration for charging stations, like with this hotel, and seeing as that there's going to be a high volume of motorists coming off the highway and things like that? And specifically with the reduced parking, I just didn't know if a charging station had presented itself in this scope, if that was something that yourself or the developer has considered.
Sure, Mr. Chair. That is usually something that's brought up as part of the site plan application, which would follow approval of the zone change. But it hasn't been a topic that has been brought up in our correspondence with staff.
Sorry, this mic is very challenging. So I'll just volley that to you, Mr. Gilbert. Is that something after this process, if approved, that would be, I guess my question is that if we move forward with charging stations and vehicles, and we're looking at a reduced amount of parking, where do you shimmy that in along with the other questions that have been asked for this site?
So the proposed site plan does show 4 charging stations opposite, I guess, the main entrance to the hotel. The zoning bylaw currently doesn't require any charging stations as part of the required parking. So we've left it up to the proponents of the site to respond to market demand, but in this case, there are 4 proposed on the plan.
Okay, perfect. Any further questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, committee. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
So I'll now call on anyone that would be in favor of this application to step forward. Seeing none, I'll now call on anyone that is against the application that would like to step forward. Also seeing none. So that concludes tonight's meeting. A decision on these items will be made at the council meeting on Thursday, and I'll now look for a mover to adjourn the meeting. Councillor Wismer Van Meer, seconded by Councillor Martin. All in favor? The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much.